Well, now, earlier I went down to Westminster to speak to the man who succeeded Margaret Thatcher as Prime Minister, Sir Jon Major. I asked him whether, as Margaret Thatcher's effectively chosen son, it might tell us something about how she felt about men. Did he feel she liked him, and if so, why?
Well, I think I really can't tell you that. I can only say in her government, until I became Prime Minister, when I served in her government, we had a very good and friendly relationship. We did row. We had quite a lot of rows on policy, never on personal matters, but on policy. Personally, we seemed to get on extremely well. There was never any difficulty about that. But we did disagree on policy, and she knew I didn't agree with some of her policies. The thing to understand about Margaret is she liked people who would stand up to her and argue with her.
Having a row with a woman is one thing. Having a row with a woman who is Prime Minister is another. And a lot of men seem to have had a lot of trouble doing that.
Well, some may have done. They must answer for themselves. I can only say that as Prime Minister, I don't ever recall her saying to me or anybody else, "I'm Prime Minister, therefore I'm right." That wasn't the way she operated. She wanted to win the argument, not have the person arguing with her back off because of her position. So she was combative, and that was an intrinsic part of her nature. It was partly how she teased out policy.
As a journalist, I think, if I'm allowed to venture, that two things define her. The Anglo-Irish agreement, which was extraordinarily pragmatic, given everything that had gone up before it, and signing the Single European Act as a very Eurosceptical Prime Minister. How do you react to that?
Well, you picked exactly the right word a moment ago. There are many Margaret Thatchers. These days, there's a Margaret Thatcher of legend. And for those who worked with her, there's the Margaret Thatcher that really existed. And the Margaret Thatcher that really existed was much more pragmatic about politics than the legend would have you believe.
That's fascinating, because she was so strident in public.
Yes, but in private, she was much more pragmatic. I mean, before she took on the miners, she very pragmatically built up the coal stocks. She signed the Single European Act, as you know. She campaigned earlier for us to remain members of the European Community, as it was then called. She was a good deal more pragmatic when she was considering policy than she appeared to be when she was talking about policy.
It's difficult to ask a man who was Prime Minister himself, but where do you think history will put Margaret Thatcher in the litany of British Prime Ministers?
Oh, I think as peacetime Prime Minister, very high. In the 20th century, I can't see a peacetime Prime Minister who will have a higher reputation than she will. Depends which aspects of policy you look at, but if you're looking at someone who made the political weather rather than followed the political weather, I can't think of one who made it to the same extent that she did on so many issues at any time in the 20th century. So I think among Prime Ministers in the last 100 years, she'll be one of the tallest trees.
Sir Jon Major, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.